Let me share Zoom link. YouTube link I've shared. Sorry guys. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions? Nobody has any questions? Okay. I was thinking to talk something about web security too. I think I can do that. Just wait for a couple of minutes. I just want to know. So in your, so how do you detect security problems in your, who is responsible for detecting those things? Is it a separate team which checks things, or is it generally for everyone in the team? Um, I'm audible, right? Hello.
Hello. You can hear
Okay.
me.
Okay. Fine. Yeah. So I thought I can share something around cross-site scripting today. Just let me wait for a couple of more minutes. If anybody else is joining, we can just start. Just give me a second. Okay. I'll just start with something on cross-site scripting. So assuming you know what cross-site scripting is, and I was just looking into what is the top 10 issues what generally application security is, and it turns out cross-site scripting is something in top 7 issues which has been detected. And this is something which is very easy to fix also. It's not very difficult to fix. The patterns are very clear, and I'm assuming this issue would have been there for a very long time. The moment uh, we are able to run JavaScript in browser from then, I think the security which have been there. There are generally two kinds of cross-site scripting. So what exactly cross-site scripting is, if anybody is unaware, is basically if you are able to run a JavaScript which you have not, if in your site somebody else is able to run a JavaScript which you have not written, right? I think here you see a script user is going to alert something, or the other ways, there are two specific, two general there are two ways of two sections. One is generally called reflected attacks, and another one is stored attacks. So reflected attack is basically you pass something the URL, and backend or any service what you're using doesn't validate it but returns these whatever you're passing it in the query. So for example, it would be, let's say, a query, a search API, right? And you might send a query in that, and while returning back, the API returns a query whatever you have sent. And in the client, if you're not validating and you're just rendering whatever has been sent, then that could lead to a cross-site scripting error, because now in that query itself, the JS could be sent and the JS would be rendered in your browser. So why is it a problem? Is if your browser, if anybody is able to execute any JS in your site, then anything the user or the JS is able to do, uh, the script will also be able to do that. So basically, probably calling APIs to, let's say, book something, delete something, or sharing the same links to other users in the same platform, that can also be done. So any, and even worst case, if your cookies or tokens are also being, if you're able to take read from JS, then This could also mean that other third parties could also read the uh, tokens in your JS. So on a side note, what I would say is if you are in your system, if to, side note, this is like I have written a blog on this that you shouldn't be storing tokens in your uh, if it's any token should not be stored where it could be accessed from your JS, right? The reason is if for some reason uh, if for some reason your JS is compromised, and this would mean that they could also read your tokens, and if the tokens are long lived, it could also be a problem. So that's one of the problems with the attacks. So I have small demo to just to give an idea of how this would work. So here, this is a I can show you the code. This is nothing much. I'm just what I'm doing is just it's a server with I'm taking the query as a tag, and if the tag is not there, I'm just showing some text. This is just a sample code I got from internet. The demo code is how to run EJS. I'm just trying to write something on top of it. So usually it could be some, let's say, hello, right? Something like this, right? And it just shows up hello over here. And this is generally not a problem. This could be also something like it could be hello, you're taking user in the tag, or as I said, right? Or this could be your search results query. So this could have been no, let's say search text, whatever the search text is, and uh, you're just showing result for search text, something like that, and that's why you're just backend is returning the result. In this case, it's not a big deal, and the problem here is now if this was a no image tag, the reason we are using so now it alert we are able to run a JS from here, right? The problem is now there are the reason we are using JS this way is this is one of the still working way where JS can be executed as any event handler for in HTML elements. There are other ways you could, if you like putting some script in your p tag and those things. Modern browsers try to block them. They, if you're injecting a script inside a p tag or something, they don't allow you to do it. But images on error on these things are still a valid JS. So anything inside, we are just doing alert, but this could be, no, probably alert document dot cookies, something like, right? It could show up. See, if you would see the random cookies got showed up, and I'm not sure about those cookies were some local dev cookies, but those are the problems, right? Now this entire cookie could have been stored, and they could have been used that cookie. So how do we prevent this, right? So in more, I, so I told you that too. This is one way. This is your whatever you're sending is getting reflected in your browser directly. That is reflected. And there are other thing called stored attack, where your whatever you're doing gets stored in the DB, and without sanitation, it gets stored. Other users might get affected. This could be like your comments in a blog, or it could be also, let's say you're filling up a profile in your app, and there is a sales agent who's sitting in some dashboard and reading your information. And if that information sent from the user is not sanitized and saved, and the browser is rendering as is, this could mean what this user could actually run a script in the machine of a sales agent or some admin, and you would probably leak out more information because now you have access of a internal employee or something like that. So that's stored attack, where the information gets stored in the DB and other users could read. But the fix for both of them are almost similar. The thing is, when you're reading something, you need to sanitize it, and when you're putting back to the browser, I think then you should mostly validate what you're doing. So if in EJS, actually it's very easy. This is something EJS does to escape whatever your this is specific to EJS. But in case of your Node browsers, you could, I think you will get something called Node sanitize. I think there should be some package to sanitize the inputs. So whatever input you're going to take, make sure you're sanitizing them. There's sanitize HTML. I think this should be fine. Other one is not updated. This is 28. I think this is, I think. This is comparatively good downloads. You can check whatever you want to. Basically, this is one of the attack we just saw, right? So if you're not using EJS, probably use something like that uh, to sanitize the output. Other thing is in your front end also, applications like React actually escapes whatever these scripts. They doesn't allow you to run those things, but the problem is there are cases where you could do it. The another API is dangerously set HTML. If you have heard it, I think one of the well named APIs. Uh, Ranger is set in our HTML, right? So if you're setting some element through this, and this could be probably you might know for your use. So I think they also mentioned cross scripting attack here also, right? So this markup could lead to security bugs. So one thing to avoid is if avoid using dangerous set inner HTML. But in any case, if you have to do it, make sure the input from your backend is sanitized. And if you're not sanitized in your front end also, I think this package works in your front end also. I think I saw it somewhere. It could be used in browser also. So you could sanitize in your browser. Uh, Another thing is whenever you're the reason why I wanted to at least speak out some level of security is these kind of things is much easier for as a application developer while you're building this application to realize, hey, whatever I'm passing is getting back this without any validation comes back to me. So I need to tell my backend developers, hey, or any who is relevant developers, hey, you need to sanitize this, otherwise you might end up in some problems. Yeah, I think that's mostly what I want to talk about SSRI. I thought I will take some simple topic to start with, and probably we could go in much more detail on how to find these things. There are, I can share this. I think this is, yeah, I can share this link on how there are more information on how you could detect those things in an external application if you do not own the application. But while building the application, I think this is much easier to find through your, I think by experience. So this is something basic thing you can look out for while building an application. That this is, I think this problem is something which it can be easily be solved from just front end also. So I think having something, yeah, I just share these two in case you want to look into more. Yeah, also there is a something called Port Swig. So yeah, this is a very good resource for if you want to learn security in case you're looking to. Wait, share the actual link. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to talk about exercises today. Anybody has any doubts on this? No doubts.
No, not really, man. I think it was clear.
Okay, so in your team, does it like is any team which is responsible for doing this or catching this, or is it everybody in the organization is responsible for doing this?
Well, at my company, I don't think we actually do that much about this. I don't think that there's actually someone responsible for it. But
Okay, okay. So how do you look into security? So this is basically whatever your while building whatever comes into. I think that's how you are taking care of security for now, I guess.
yeah, I think by most, yeah, sanitizing input, just like the very basic stuff. And I think also certain frameworks do help you with disallowing like this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah. I think most of the modern frameworks does protect you in some way, but there are some escape hatches would still be in effect. So I think having some idea on those things could help.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, sure.
I think this is what I want to talk about Sandisk. Otherwise, if you anybody has any questions on anything, can ask. What
You
else
hear
should
me?
I? Sorry.
Does my microphone work? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. I was just checking my microphone. I might have a question here. Let me see if I have something.
Sure, sure.
I was kind of in the middle of something else, but hold on.
Sorry.
What kind of? I mean, what I don't. What is your background in React? Are you like what is your background as a developer? What is your expertise or whatever? Are you like more of a front end or a back end, or I mean, what kind of questions are you?
I am mostly front end. Mostly, I've worked in React-based applications.
Okay.
Is your question something on front end or mostly
I
back
mean,
end?
I've got all kinds of questions really all the time, but I'm not. I was really just. I didn't really have anything prepared, and but I'm sure I can come up with some. I
Sure,
was actually.
sure.
Yeah, give me a minute, and
Yeah, sure.
I'll have some questions.
Cool.
I mean, how often did you encounter anything in the wild where this was actually being abused or
Uh, so
like a big story or I don't know.
I don't have a big story as so there was kind of a problem which was related to this. So for some application where tokens were shared in the browser, and because of this attack was still so yeah, so this attack was happening. So it was so most of the applications were in React, so we never encountered this problem. But the some field was not sanitized. This was a very old thing, and because of that, one of the old dashboard, this was purely written in JS. Very old dashboard, nothing much happening there. Uh, there, this particular field was able to run JS. So this is something we have caught in security audit. And this was not a big problem as such, but the thing is, this is still exists because if you are not, the problem there was developers who it was built before, and it was a very simple application, so nobody thought of using React or any modern framework for it to build that page. So yeah, in that sense, in that case, this thing actually had a problem. So instead of, I think, same attack, same something similar, where an image something like could have been put and a script could have been loaded from there, but we caught it during audits, so that was good. So this problems, I think the reason I was even surprised is this problem is still on all the top 10 of, or I don't know how to pronounce. This is one of the leading entities on security, so they still have it in top 10. So still happening at times. It's not an old one.
Yeah,
So
makes
it's
sense. Cool. Cool.
yeah, yeah. If anybody has any other, it need not be based on this security. It could be on other things also. Could be. This is something which I thought if any people are joining, I could just let them know on these things too.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very elaborate one with TypeScript and polymorphism, but I don't know how much you know about that.
I'm not very much good with TypeScript polymorphism. I'm not sure. Is it? Yeah, I think can. Okay, other thing what I could. Okay, I can just show me. I think I can talk something on. Have you heard of Open Directs? This is another vulnerability. This is a very small one, but so you could have seen code something like this anywhere, right? Have like if let's say you have a login page or something, and you say let's just say if it's logged in, and you just say request dot query dot URL, query dot uh, URL, and you're just returning that. So I'll redirect. Have you guys seen this kind of code anywhere? Like probably. Basically, this could be next URL for your after login or something like that. If in this case, this is also a security concern where you're actually redirecting without any validation on what the URL is. So if I say if I don't do this, is about and just save it, and let's say go to about, and let's say next URL equal to slash something like that. I don't know. Probably at this. Okay, this server. I need to restart the server. It doesn't have node mon. Yeah, so this should. Next year is not defined. Where did I go wrong? Sorry, this will be considered query or next URL. Yeah, so this is something you generally do for any login page, and you would just say next URL this, but the problem could be this URL could be some other website. Where is it? Slash about, and this could be some other website, and you could actually take the user to some other website. And the real problem with this is very easy for a phishing attack. So if you might trust the actual domain, and at some point your domain is getting changed, and user might not realize that domain has changed, and you're taking to some other uh, place. And the easier way to detect, easiest ways to protect from user from this is uh, validating uh, the domain itself before redirecting. You shouldn't just check whether your site is you're just starting with slash, because if you this could also be, let me show about, let's see this, and this is also a valid URL. So if it just slash, then also it could also break. So the idea is make sure you are checking the URL with complete domain, and you're making sure the first thing is avoid if you can avoid them. If you're not able to avoid it, the other thing what you could do is just make sure each and every domain which you have, if you have multiple domains like Google, if you go to Google Auth, let me just show Google, and if you go to Google Auth, if you Google Gmail, and if you see the URL, uh, sign in. Yeah, what Google does is on continue puts the entire email. Here you see, you could also do something like this, or I think this is the most safest way, put the complete URL, and while redirecting, make sure this complete URL is your own URL. So here, if I just, I think if I change it to some other URL, this login would not allow you to do it. It just is some error. So this way your users are protected from phishing attacks or anything, because after this you might go to another URL which they might take information which you're not intending to give. So yeah, that's something. This is called open redirect. I think I've shared this thing or the link in the Discord chat if you want to look more into this. Yeah, I think that's should be it from me. I'm assuming no other questions, right?
Yeah. Okay. You commented on a post I posted on Discord about
Okay.
where to put the logic for when you're using hooks, using
Okay.
use reduce use context, and you
Yeah, yeah,
recommended the reducer. Now, there's no middleware with, like there is with Redux for making my calls to the database. And right now, I have the Firestore. I'm setting the updating the Firestore database and the reducer, and that's not really what you're not supposed to do stuff like that in the reducer, correct?
yeah.
Generally, or not?
Reducers are supposed to be usually pure functions, not supposed to do any kind of async task over there. Just a general idea. It's not.
I
It's just
mean,
a
the thing
pack.
about it is like uh, I'm not really waiting. I'm not really fetching anything. I'm actually just sending. I'm updating.
Yeah, that's a side effect, right? So let's assume that thing runs twice for some reason. Would it create a problem? Is it item burden then? Like it's creating a side effect, right?
So I would call that like where the action more where like more, the action is like when I call the action that
Hmm.
dispatches the producer. That's where I would call update the database. Like, I guess.
Hmm. Updating
Um,
database. You're using Redux or you're not using Redux?
no, I'm not using
Okay.
Read.
Yeah, so if you're not using Redux, then you can do your calling your API in a, if it's based on particular state change, you can put it in use effect. If you wanted to sync every time the state changes, or if you do not want to sync on every time the state changes, you want it on user action, I think it's better to put it in a, what do you say, event handler. And once the event handler on success or failure, you could change your state, trigger your reducer action.
Okay. Um,
Dispatching your action with the proper payload would be after in your event handler would be fine.
okay. And then you recommended doing all the logic in the reducer, like instead of doing that where like remember that the post
Yeah,
like
yeah.
post like
So
you could have like one reducer that could be like more generic that just updates the tasks, and you would do more of the logic outside, before that reducer, and then that reducer could take in different use cases, or you would have the logic done in the reducers, but then they would have to be very specific.
so depends on the utility you're writing. So let's say the utility what let's say in your I think that what you're shared is on
Yeah, that was just kind of filler code. That's not like a real use case. I was
yeah,
just kind
yeah.
of using
So if your
example.
logic is not reusable outside, then keep it inside the reducer itself because that would, while reading the code, you won't have to search what all places this particular logic is being used. You can just keep it inside the case where it is being used, so that reduces your global space. Otherwise, you will have lot of these functions which are being used only once, but they are in a space where multiple reducers could access, even though they are not required to. So in that case, keeping it inside the reducer is better if they are not reused. If you think they can be shared between multiple actions, then of course then move it outside and keep it on.
So like if you're going to make it like a hook that would be reused by other people, then
Yeah,
you wouldn't do that. But if
yeah,
you're just using it for yourself, then it doesn't matter. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, yeah. There's if you're using for only one, then I would say keep it inside so that others are not bothered with your.
That's the whole thing. Is honestly, I wasn't even planning on making a hook that I could share, like a custom hook that I was going to share or try to implement. I was really just kind of trying to move some of the kind of refactor my application because there was a lot of stuff in that one file, and I know that you're supposed to kind of try and make your components kind of only do one thing, one specific thing. So I was really just trying to extract some of that out of that component, some of the logic, and I figured the best way to do that is with a custom hook, whether or not you plan on reusing it or not. Correct?
Yeah,
Or
this is what I have had some opinions on this. Basically, if you're creating abstraction, if it's on global space, if anything goes in the global shared space where multiple people can access, then the cost of maintenance is high, right? If you have a function which can be accessed by multiple functions or multiple modules, then every time you touch this particular function, even though this is not used by a lot of uh, functions, you'll have to make sure this sticks and it works well for all the cases and stuff. So if you're not being used multiple places, keeping it inside reduces your maintenance cost, because you're just sure only one place it is used. So even if you want to tomorrow refactor the code, you're sure just this, only this particular reducer or this particular action is going to use this particular code. So it's much easier for you to refactor later. If you keep it in global or shared space, then you'll have to always make sure this is not being used by other people before you refactor that particular function or particular piece of code.
I guess. Um, you hold on, let me see if there's something else I have. I mean, I probably do. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure, sure.
I mean, basically, like, do you have any advice on refactoring? Like, I mean, if I were to show you, like, basically, right now I have like serious props, apocalypse, where I have
Mhm.
insane amounts of prop drilling, and this, like, I started making this to-do list, just as an experiment, and then the more I just started adding more and more features to it, and it's just kind of gotten out of control. So now I'm trying to refactor it using context and reducer. And then after I do that, I will probably re-implement it in Redux, because I'm honestly just learning all this stuff. So,
Yeah, for learning, it's okay. I think otherwise, Redux, usually for me, I have felt it's a overkill in most of the applications, but it depends on your use cases. With regards to refactoring a code, what I would say is at logically at one place in an application, figure out where you can write integration tests. This is the best way, what I feel you can refactor code. Wherever you can write, probably it could be module or page wise, whatever you have a logical distinction between, and write integration tests for those particular pieces. Your integration test shouldn't rely on what underneath you're using, right? Is it Redux or reducers or state? Nothing. It shouldn't matter what you're using. Your test should work regardless of the pattern you're using underneath. So once that's the important part. Once you're done with that, if those tests are good and you see, hey, I have decent amount of coverage and decent amount of cases, or your most critical parts have been covered in these tests, now you can change it to hooks or states or whatever you want, so that then you could easily refactor your code. In
so
specific to
you're saying
refactoring,
that, like,
yeah,
with before I start refactoring, the props, the the props version, and start using the use reducer and use context version, I should do integration testing on the first version where I had the
yeah.
all the props drilling.
Your component, let's say you have page, let's say an slash register, right? Like that could be a page, and that slash register page does not have a prop or anything, right? It's just one page gets rendered based on a route. Now, internal of that, what the page gets rendered doesn't really know the props and those things. Now, that entire component or entire page could be tested without having to rely on what you're using underneath.
I mean, that's the whole thing. I honestly don't really know anything. I've never done any testing. That's a whole new skill I have to learn. But
That's, I think it's an important skill to that. By that, you will have a lot of confidence while you're refactoring code, because doesn't matter what I write, my tests will take care of it.
yeah. But I mean, wouldn't you just, if I wanted to at least just kind of get out of the apocalypse, like
Mhm.
start switch over to context, you know? And like honestly, doesn't use like when you start using the reducer pattern just because of the pure functions, doesn't that like kind of improve performance somehow or no?
Mm, Performance, it would depend on your application. So if a reducer is changing lot of state and multiple applications are listening to that changes, then you might not get a performance just by using reducer. right? It would depend on how you are propagating those states to multiple components. That would depend on how you are architecting your application.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I
when
don't.
you're yeah, so other thing what I want to mention was if you're refactoring code, one thing to other, just what I mentioned, right? If those whatever piece of code is not needed to be shared with multiple components, then do not keep it in a shared space. Keeping it something in a shared space has its own cost, so that it signify
That's
it.
that's the whole thing. Is I think before I can even start trying to do any testing and stuff, is I need to break up some of the components into smaller pieces, and that's what kind of what I'm trying to do. And
Yeah.
mm,
So it would, if you, it would be very difficult for you to be 100% sure of migrating if you do not have tests covering your cases, because there might be edge cases and things which you might overlook, which these
so
tests would not be.
what are you talking about? Using React testing library or Jest or both? Or I mean, honestly, I've not done any testing at all, so I wouldn't even really know where to begin.
Yeah,
Where should I
React,
begin?
you would need React testing library is just helper assertions. You would need, I think, Just and React testing library would work very well together. You can start with that, and I think it's a very important
Do I need
skill
to
to
learn
have.
unit testing first and then integration testing, or is that too? Is that am I not? Or can I just jump into integration testing, or am I? Do
Unit
I
testing are easy to learn, but like it's easy for you to start with unit testing, but integration testing would give you more value.
uh, I mean, my question is like, is unit testing part of integration testing, and so I would have to learn that first, or is
Uh,
it
uh,
not?
they both use the same concept. It's just basically what you mock and what you do not mock is what the difference between a unit test and integration test is. Integration unit test, you would mock a lot of dependencies. Unit test, you try to not mock those dependencies. That's the basic difference you could think about these two. The way of writing the test will be almost same. It's just
Okay, honestly, I don't even know what mock means. What does mock mean?
okay. Mocking mode is basically, let's say you have an API call and you cannot mock call the actual API during your test, right? So you would want to make sure you're mocking that API call.
So it would be like making a fake API call or something.
Yeah, instead of making an API call, you would mock the API call.
Right. That's what I thought. I mean, I've heard that term before. And I assume that's what it referred to.
Okay. Mudit has, what stack do you recommend for building MVP? I think Next.js is good. SEO reasons, if your application is really, the reason I prefer Next.js is it has a lot of basic things what you need. That's why Next.js works well. SEO, yeah, if your application requires a lot of SEO, I think having server-side enterprise applications could help you in that. And quickest way to port the same code to mobile app. So first thing is to know whether your application needs mobile app. Can they work with mobile website and PWAs? If you think this is just giving a suggestion based on, if you think there's a market for actual app to be built, then you could have these. You could have a monorepo or some kind of a way where you could share your application code. Do not try to share your UI logic. I think it won't be possible first of all, and it would be really difficult to do that also. Try to, your business logic is most you could share. I think keeping it in a monorepo, having two different monorepo, or if you, or you have one package where application logic stays and two other application packages just importing them as your code. I think that should work. That's the easiest way to share your mobile app. If you're building something new, I would say try with mobile websites and PWAs, and there are TWA also, which you could go on Android. If you're building for most of India Android applications, so they would come under trusted web activity. So these are basically uh, your PWAs in as an APK. They you can put to Play Store. So if you find enough traction, then I would say invest in building actual applications. Otherwise, it's just because they are using building web apps, building native apps is a bit more expensive than building web apps. So if you have market, then this is a way to figure out if you have market. I'll just share this link in the Slack channel if you're looking forward. Oh, my system started. slowing down. I hope with it I have answered your question, or is it anything more on this?
Hello. Hey.
How?
Yeah. So yeah, actually, yeah. My question is like, I wanted to port it the code into a mobile application. So would you recommend using Ionic, React, or React Native? Because I want this thing to build as quick as possible. Like in a week, I had to just demo to
Oh,
someone.
okay. So in a week, if you're trying to build an application, I think easiest way is to wrap it in a web view and uh, check it in a React Native. I don't. Ionic would be good. You just need a web view. So anything which can wrap it in a web view, you can show it up. That's the easiest way you could check.
Yeah.
But that's not building an actual application. So that wouldn't be.
Yeah. It's basically for like showing mobile and web, just for the demoing purpose.
Yeah, domain purpose, I think if you're comfortable with React Native, we can just put entire app inside a React Native web view and show it to them, like whoever you're trying to demo it. Hey, this is how application might look like. But in actual sense, if you're building for a long term, then your application logic. So when you're building this, even though you could share in React Native also, but UI and UX differ in Android and iOS. So you might still want to, in those things, you might have to take care of actual applications. They might differ. So to test it out, web views are web apps in mobile websites are better. But yeah, to demo it, you can put it any comfortable language you are there. Just wrap it in a web view and we can do a demo.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm, Uh, I guess that's it, guys. Is it this? Any questions, anything? Or that's otherwise we can wrap it up.
I don't know how many more questions of mine you feel like answering, but if you feel like answering some more questions, I
Yeah,
have
yeah. If
some.
you have questions, please. Sure, sure.
Um, well, I mean, this it kind of sends you like a link to Sandbox, and maybe just get your opinion on if what I could maybe do to break down some of these bigger components, or is that too much to ask?
You can share. We'll see. I will be
I
around
mean,
for another 15 minutes.
I don't
So
want to make you work too hard, but it's pretty. It's just a to-do list, really.
yeah,
Here,
yeah.
how do I?
Okay, you can share the code. We can see what we can do it for next. I think I have another 15 minutes, 4 minutes to be here.
Okay.
We can share.
And if somebody else has a better question, you can just answer their question and cut me off. Um, how do I get the chat going? Okay. All right. I think that's it. Did you get that? Did you see that link I sent?
Where did you send? You have sent the link anywhere? Okay, yeah. Code
Is it-
works. Let me just.
And you can put in a fake name and a fake password just to get in there. It's fake email, fake name, fake password.
Let me just write. What did I do?
Honestly, it's probably, I'm looking at it now. It might be too. I might be asking you to this might be too much for you to have to process
Okay.
right now.
Yeah. Let me see if I'm able to give some input. I'll try to. I don't know. My internet seems to be acting up.
Or I mean, there actually is a question, like a kind of specific question I get asked about one of the kind of bugs in here. If you, once you're able to, have you were you able to log in yet?
Yeah, I tried to log in. This me just. I don't know why is it. I opened it somewhere, right? Oh, it's here. Just close this thing. Yes, I see. Is there anything specific you want to ask in this?
Yeah. Okay. Are you? Can you see just the task list where it has the initial tasks there?
Task context.js. Or
Can I see your screen? Do you have your? What, am I? Where's?
yeah, I'm
I mean,
sharing my screen on Zoom.
I think I closed that page or something. How do I open that back up? Oh, there it is. Is that your screen? Okay. You're. Oh, it's not rendering for you.
Yeah, it's still going on, but you can tell me where the code is. We'll just look into the code.
Well, I was actually going to have you hover over something because that's one of the things. It's like there's this one thing where you hover over it and
Mm-hmm.
it starts to kind of just nonstop switching between the states. And
Okay.
I don't know the way to fix that or not. But as far as
Uh,
the code goes,
where exactly
yeah,
would the code be? Can you just tell me where the code is? Code for
yeah,
that particular part
I'll
is?
tell you what the code is. Question I have that might be like if you go to open the components and then go to task list and then go to task item.
Task
Uh,
list. Okay. Task item. Okay. Okay.
I mean, that's just supposed to be a task, just one task, and it's like 230 lines. But um, this I got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff going on. I mean, that one task can be swiped to to delete, and it can be dragged and dropped to be resorted. And there's all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
like badges and stuff that come up. And like there's this thing. See how I have all those animate presence calls like for like each
Mm-hmm.
state. I mean, all that kind of stuff right there, I know is kind of like a code smell. Just having that animate presence. I mean, isn't there kind of a way? There should. Am I correct that all there should be a way to kind of like make that more dry, right?
Well, this is fine. This seems okay to me. I don't like do. Thing is, if you're repeating it too many times and you see that something could be abstracted out, then for sure. Otherwise, I don't see a need for this particular component to be abstracted. This seems okay to me. But
Really? Okay.
yeah, what exactly is the problem you mentioned? You have some bug with
Oh, if you, I mean, are you able to see the UI yet?
UI still loading, and my system just started spinning up. I'm not sure why.
Basically, it's but okay. I mean, I can show you where the code is.
Mhm.
It might be hard to understand what the
Is
bug
this
is, but
something which has to do with mostly Venter and you're just hovering and setting false? Is this one which is causing the bug?
what?
On mouse enter and on mouse leave.
Um, oh yeah,
Your
that's
this could get called way too many times. You might want to throttle or debounce this.
are you
Uh,
talking about the okay? Yeah, you're right. Because I have seen that. Like I at one point I had like a console log and I took it out, but every time I would hover over the task, it would like console log like loads of times.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I know.
This is just a boolean, so it might not be a big deal, but you might want to put some kind of debouncing or throttling so that your UI doesn't feel sluggish.
Um, uh, so I would do that with like use memo or something or use callback.
Uh, you could use something called just use state with some kind of set timer trickery. So you could Google for use debounce. You might get some uh, your sample code for how to use debounce with React. I think this you can just see how this is used on usehooks.com.
Use to bounce React hook. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that should work. You can just I think this is
All right.
listen. I'll share it in Discord. So this should give you some idea on how to debounce it.
Okay. I don't even know what debouncing is, but I'll read this. And
Yeah, debouncing is just to give you an idea. It's if you do not want some particular function to be called, no, you're waiting for X amount of time before your function gets called.
uh,
If you're just waiting for 200 milliseconds or 300 milliseconds before your code actually function gets called, so that if it gets called multiple times, you wait for that long. Uh,
you set how many times, or I mean, how is that different than using like one of the React hooks that use Isn't there a React hook like use callback or use memo that does something similar?
No, use memo and use callback does not have to do anything with the time. It just use memo gets called or use callback. Both of them gets called whenever there is a change in the dependency. In your case, I think the dependency wouldn't change that often, but you're still trying to set the state. I think if for tomorrow, if this is an object or something, then it could lead to a problem. So I think having it in handling it in case that could be good.
Okay.
Is there any, does there, I'm not sure, because I'm not able to see your applications, I'm not sure what exactly is your bug.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you can't see it, but yeah. Let me try and find what I was gonna ask about. If you go to the task form component, um,
Task?
task form, uh,
Also, this has a warning with ESLint. I guess it says warning with ESLint. New list makes an array dependency use effect hook and change every render. Oh, yeah. So this particular line changes in every render, and I think you have a dependency on that. Where is it?
yeah, I was gonna ask about that because I saw that earlier, and
Yeah, so
I
you
didn't
have
use that.
task list here, right? I think what is it called?
In my local VS Code, I didn't see that, but then when I loaded it in Code Sandbox, I saw that error. So I was actually curious about how to deal
Yeah,
with that.
so this is basically what. So whenever your function gets called task item, this is a new task item created, right? This is a new list,
Yeah.
and it's always a new list. Every render, this is going to a new list, and you're using this new list in a hook here. Here is a new list, right? So this one. So this function will get called every time because this new list changes every time there is a render.
Where is that? What page is that on? What file is that in?
This task item, line number 86, you have a new list. You are using new list.
Okay. I was looking at. I'm looking at my VS Code. I'm not looking at the Code Sandbox. Um,
Yeah. Yes. In React. Uh, so, oops. My Android is acting up. Yeah, there is a list of rules you should be aware of while using hooks. I just have a look at this also. I just shared the link in the channel. Yeah, do something about this. Yeah, so here this is a new list which gets created, right? So you cannot use this as a dependency over here, new list. And I think your new list, you're mutating it somewhere. That's also not a good idea.
Oh, I have one more question actually. If you,
Sure, go ahead. I think after that I can wrap it up. Yeah, so what you're doing, like instead of, if you do not want it to update in a state, use ref, and this could be use ref, instead of doing this, this could be use ref and an empty object, and where you're using it, where are you using it? This could be dot current, but I would instead I would suggest it to be a state. If you do not want it to be on state, 100, like you're very sure you do not want it to be on a state, then you could do something like this. You're able to see what I'm trying to do, right? You can just put dot current on that. So this should prevent your dependency problem.
all right, all right. I'm gonna send you a link real quick, and this is actually a simpler.
Sorry.
Um, I'm about to send you another link, and
Okay.
of a bug, and then hold on a second.
Sure. Sure.
Sorry, I'm trying to import a GitHub. But okay, I'm about to send you. Hopefully this will work. All right, I just sent you that link. Now, I have a bug on this. This is actually where I started to re-implement the app you were just looking at with use context and use reducer and oh, this is an old one. This is before I had it. Never mind. Hold
No
on, let me
issues.
see.
You could
That's
bring
that.
it up next time if you're able to. Is this the
Yeah.
right one?
The one I just sent you was the wrong one. No, that was actually before.
Okay.
That was when I was trying to figure out how to use a callback, how to use a custom hook and a callback, which I figured out because you have to pull it out. But I actually hold on. Let me see if I can find that. I know I had another version of it
No
somewhere.
issues. If you're not able to find, we can definitely do it in the
All right,
next one. But
all
yeah.
right. Yeah, well, we can. I'll probably next week. I'll have more questions organized. So I didn't know you were
Sure.
going to have some. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay then. I'll just wrap it up then. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining in. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.